¿Qué ondas, primos y primas? And welcome back to my Primos podcast. My name is Freddie. With me tonight, I have Terry Blas, right? Terry Blas? Or
Perfecto. Yep.
Terry Blas? What do you prefer?
Right. It depends. It's like my mom calls me Terry. And if I'm doing an interview in Spanish, it's Terry Blas. But if I'm doing an interview, it's usually like easier for people to be like Terry Blas, so whatever you want.
Yeah, man. I mean, I live in Texas. I live over here in Texas. I know you're in Oregon?
Yeah, I'm right
You're in
outside of
Oregon?
Portland. Yep.
So here in Texas, there used to be a chain of grocery stores, grocery stores called Terry's. And it
Oh,
was
really?
and look it up. It's called Terry's, El Mariachi Terry's, and it was this literally
Oh,
cartoonish mariachi character,
I'm taking
Terry.
notes.
And there
I'm
you go,
writing
man.
it
There you
down.
go. And as soon as I
That's
saw like,
great.
oh, like Terry. In my head, all I think is, oh, El Terry's, like
El mariachi.
El Mariachi, El
That's
Mariachi
great.
Loco. That'll be the intro.
Next time I'm there, it's all over Texas?
It was a big chain here. Like they shut mine down, but Terry's was a big deal here for a while. I don't know if it's blown up anymore, but in the South it was called Terry's.
Nice. I'll check it out. That's awesome.
Definitely. But with me, got Primos, I have of course Terry Blas. We're going to talk about his current work. He is working on the current issue of Reptil. We're excited to talk about that, as well as his other work, his journey, just chat. You know how we do it here on the show, Primos. But first, just know we have, of course, all the socials for you at My Primos Podcast. We have our Discord. Hit us up. It's lonely out there sometimes with 6 people chatting about Loki, which maybe we'll chat about here too. But Terry, here we are, man. Let's chat about you a little bit. So, where did it start for you? Where did you grow up? Did you always grow up on the West Coast?
It's one of those questions that I'm one of those people where you ask that and it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I have to tell you a story. You know what I mean? Because
Perfect format for that, by the way.
right. I was born in Fort Ord, California, so near Monterey. It was an army base that no longer really exists. My dad was in the military. But pretty soon my family moved to Boise, Idaho. And so I grew up mostly in Idaho. My dad is from Idaho. My mom is from Amecameca, Mexico, which is, most people have heard of Puebla, at least.
Yeah,
But
my
there's
wife's
like,
from Puebla.
see, there's a volcano, El Popo, at the base of Puebla, El Popocatépetl. And
Okay.
my mom's town, Ameca, is on the other side of the volcano from Puebla.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
So we would try our best whenever we could and whenever we could afford it to go in the summer and visit my mom's family. And I grew up speaking English and Spanish. When I was 16, my dad retired from the military and I moved with them to Ixtapa, Zihuatanejo, like I think it's like 100 miles up the beach from Acapulco. Lived there for a little while, came back to the States to finish high school. I moved to New York City. I lived in the Bronx. Then I moved to Los Angeles for a few years. And now I've been in Portland for about 16 years.
Wow. So
So
Portland's
all
home.
over. Yeah, this is home.
This is home, right?
Yeah.
We grew up in LA. Me and my wife are from LA. She grew up in Puebla, and then she came when she was young. You know, her family came over when she was real young. But LA was home forever, man. Then I fell in love, and I followed her out here to Texas, right? And pues aquí llegamos. You know, Texas is home now. But Texas has been. I mean, my son was born in LA. He's almost 12 now. So yeah, like I said, Texas is home now for us. But you still remember LA, the West Coast, the weather. I miss the weather so much.
Yeah, that's the thing I miss about LA is, I mean, here I have to drive like 50 minutes just to get like a concha or like a decent place that sells like tacos or tamales or whatever.
But isn't Portland like the whole I mean, again, pop culture, right? Cartoons, TV, like the hip place, and it's kind of like Austin.
There is really great food here, and it's a very welcoming and open kind of place, like especially for young people. But it is the whitest major city in the country. So, yeah.
True. Not a lot of color there. Not a lot of conchas. Not a lot of birrerias. Not a lot of pupuserias, maybe, from Salvador. So we look for good pupusas, man.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, that's pretty much it. And then, when I moved out to Portland, I went to art school here. I got an illustration degree, and that's what I started doing in comics, was drawing covers and then some interior like comic work. But several years ago, I transitioned mostly into writing, just because when you draw comics, you have to be able to draw everything, and True. I didn't want to draw bikes and buildings and cars.
Lampposts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I like drawing people. I like drawing characters. And the reason I like drawing characters is because I like creating characters and telling stories. And I was like, wait a minute. I'm an organized person. I love structure. I love telling people stories. This seems like it's tailor-made for me. I'm going to try my hand at writing. And if I do that, I can write something, somebody else can draw it, and while they're drawing it, I can write something else. So
You
for me,
know,
I was like, yeah, I can get paid faster doing
shit, right?
this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because think about it this way: it's always like music, right? I go to music, I used to play
Mhm.
music a lot. People always make the joke, but I love the Clash, right? And everybody
Yeah.
that knows the Clash, you know the hits, right?
Mhm.
And then I remember Joe Strummer, hey, the Clash, the Clash. But then the bass player comes in and goes, "You don't make any money if you play the bass, and you don't make any money if you don't write the songs. So I gotta write some songs, you know." And
Yeah.
sometimes in art, you're like, "Oh, cool! I love to draw. I love the building a character." And then you're right though. You're kind of like, it sucks because as the artist, I'm imagining, right, in those scenarios, it's like, hey, just draw this shit I wrote down and make it the way I want it. You
Yeah,
know?
I think that because I hopefully because I have a background in illustration, I know what it's like to draw a script somebody else writes for you. And so I try my best to, when I write something, it's very structured. But I tell the editor and I tell the artist, it's structured this way just because that's how I write, just because it's the best way for me to get it, how I get it out of my head. But if you guys have a better way, if you feel like, wait a minute, this panel, we don't need this, it can go here, and I don't care. You need to feel like you're part of the process too, and like you're contributing too. As long as the story still works, then who cares?
How
But yeah,
much
yeah,
flexing do they let you do as an artist, right? Like if someone gives you a script, I know we'll move into your work here, but like someone gave you a script and go, hey man, this is what I want. It just depends on the type of work, or is it just your tenure? Like, okay, they give you a little freedom on how you interpret the work.
I would think that, I mean, at least mostly in my experience, that I would leave that up to the editorial, like the editor, just
Gotcha.
because as comics are a collaborative team effort. It's not too often that one person does everything. Sometimes they do, and fine, and they're
Yeah.
amazing. But if you're working with an editor or if you're working with an illustrator, I want to be someone who is agreeable to work with so that you would want to work with me again. So I usually try to say, like, here are my thoughts. Like, we do notes, like all of the pencils or the inks or the colors just came in. What do you think of this? And if I have something that I really feel strongly about, I'll mention it and I'll tell the editors, but I defer to you. Like, if you think
Yeah.
that's important, great. If not, fine. But yeah, if it's some sort of like, usually if it's some sort of like continuity thing, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, no, that shirt needs to be this color because 3 panels ago it was shown here or whatever.
Yeah.
That's different than like, I just kind of want this to be different. That's a
Yeah, I
little
feel you.
different. Yeah.
Okay, okay. You know what? We picked up some of your work at Mex Americon a few years back, man. Your Wonder Woman
Mhm.
work, your
Yeah.
stuff there. Like Walter Chikume was a huge fan of your stuff. He's like, dude, I love this interpretation of the hero. Like put some color in her. You know what I mean? Into Wonder Woman, and just like I love that image, and I love the
Mhm.
representation. We're always about representation, right?
Yeah.
In all facets. Be it just Latinidad, LGBTQ, all these things that we just kind of have always been either uh, done like in a pandering fashion, unfortunately, but we've been whitewashed and
Yeah.
pandering, but now we're getting respectfully shown because the artists themselves have skin in the game,
Yeah. I feel like representation I'm very passionate about it. And for me, it's a specifically Mexican issue, if that makes any sense. Because we are the Latino Latinx community is the largest ethnic minority group in the United States with the least amount of representation across movies,
Crazy.
television, and we number roughly 50 million in the United States. Of that 50 million, 30 are Mexican. And still on TV, if we see ourselves, sometimes there's some things that are changing. There's some great people in the game who are like, champion some great representation,
But then you
especially like,
get there is a mariachi, right?
right. Or you get the like, especially for women, the fastest growing demographic in the United States is the college educated Latina. And
Hmm.
still on TV, it's like she's either like a sex object or she's like a frumpy maid or she's like a drug dealer's girlfriend. And it's like, that's not representative of the fastest growing demographic. Latinas should see that they can be brave or flawed or interesting or funny or whatever, and they're still really stereotyped. So yeah, I feel like representation is directly Mexican issue because, and you know, for me, like a LGBT issue as well, but because the way I feel is if we don't see ourselves reflected back at us, then the message that we receive is that we don't exist. Like, where are we?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
And nobody should feel
you're
that way.
shoved aside. No one's there to speak for you, right? And
Yeah.
my sister's the only correlation that she identifies as gay. Her and her wife would read some of the books, and they would tell me, "Oh, you know, like it sucks, man," but they give me this vibe. Like, how come like I'm getting mean vibes from these characters, but how come they're not just acknowledging it? Like, why is it almost having to almost be hidden in the message that
Yeah.
they're gay or they're Mexican or they're Latino, but they're not blatantly just stating it. You know, and
That's
I
why
dig that
I
in your
really,
book, you know, because I dig
yeah.
that it's out there. This familia is Mexican, and I love the
Yeah.
representation. And
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to do something in my first, well, in another book I wrote. It was called Hotel Dare, and the art was by Claudia Aguirre. She's from Mexico, and there's a young Mexican girl in it, and her sister says like, "Oh, this kid, I beat him up because he said you were queer," and she says, "I am queer," and then you move on.
yeah,
And they never really talk about it again, and that's because I wanted this character to have an adventure. I wanted them to like go do something cool in this book. And I think it was that book that the editors at Marvel read, which is why they contacted my agent and asked if I would even be interested in writing something like Reptil. So yeah.
I think it's a good time right now. I mean, things could be better, obviously, right? Like you said, especially representation. But the fact that you can write a story, write a book here that is going to one dude, who the fuck doesn't love dinosaurs? Like straight up, like who just doesn't love
Right?
dinosaurs, right?
Dinosaurs. Yeah.
Exactly, right?
I was such a dinosaur kid. I say was. I have plenty of figurine right over here, but
Right.
yeah, that's what I thought when I was approached by this. I was like, wait a minute, character is not new. He's a Mexican American kid that can turn into dinosaurs. Why have I never heard of him?
Exactly. I had
And
to
I
do
was
a
like,
Google search, like, hold on, Reptil number one. Like, who's this
yeah,
kid?
and
And
he's
he's
been around for like 10 years in comics.
like buried, no pun intended, in like
Yeah.
the like like you had to
Yeah.
almost dig to find anything decent out of it. And then the cool thing about your story is you give us, and I guess we're diving into the book a little bit,
Sure.
but we get a quick synopsis for the reader that's never known who Beto is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it made me go, okay, well, shit, let me go Google this character. Like, oh yeah, okay, I get more from
Mm-hmm.
your story, exciting me to learn about his backstory because the geek
Yeah.
like me, I want to know more.
I'm a completionist, right? Like if I now I need to know everything. I need to have
Yeah.
read everything that he's in, or because then I feel like incomplete. That's why I sometimes I love anime, but sometimes I can't do it because I'm like, what do you mean? There's 15 Sailor Moon movies. I don't. Which one? I don't need to. I can't.
Oh,
I
but
can't
this
do
is the
it.
alternate version in a different
Right.
universe, which
This is
doesn't
Sailor
count
Moon
because
and
Serena has
Crystal.
this.
Right. And I'm like,
Yeah, I'm with
okay,
you.
no.
Yeah.
So and I love it, but I'm like, I can't get into it if there's too much because then I feel like I'm never going to be able to complete it. But yeah, I thought like, who doesn't love dinosaurs? This kid should be known by everyone. How is he not the most popular Marvel character for kids? Was what I thought, And his cousin Julian in one issue says like, you have the power every kid would want.
Yeah,
Like,
and he's the
you
biggest fanboy. Like, dude,
Yeah.
you are a superhero and dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And he even pokes fun at him that you don't know every dinosaur. Like, dude,
he's like,
here's
how
an
could you
app.
not? Right. And I wanted Beto to be like, part of what I wanted him to feel like in this book was that he felt like a 16-year-old. Sometimes when I think you write a teenage superhero, you can tend to like age them up a bit because then they'll know everything about their powers, or they'll like, be super intelligent or important or whatever. And I was like, no, he's got to be into like, manga, and he's just like wants to eat tacos and play video games with his grandpa, and he's still a kid. And that's why I didn't want him to know everything about dinosaurs. Like I love cartoons, right? I don't know every single cartoon that ever existed.
Right.
And
I mean, we all try to pretend we know that obscure Brave Star cartoon reference,
Right. Yeah. I know. I mean, I know Dino Saucers. Of course, I know Dino Saucers from the 80s.
There you go. There you go.
But yeah, I just wanted him to feel. I wanted these kids to feel like kids. And then, I mean, it's pretty appropriate considering this podcast. But I was like, if I'm going to write this book about this kid, sorry, but he has to have primos because
Yeah.
who's he going to talk to?
Exactly. Like my kid's an only child, man. His cousins are everything. I was the only boy. My cousins, my primos were my blood. They were like my brothers, you know, like we had a relationship. And, you know, I love how you've written this character, but I wanted to touch a little bit back on how you mentioned, do you revert back to 16-year-old Terry when you're writing this? Because it's different times, man. I mean, no disrespect. I mean, we're 16 years ago, a whole different world.
I'm definitely not 16.
You know, shit, man. I think the shine off the light tells you I'm nowhere near 16, but there was no apps.
So I think it's a good question because I think that maybe in a way I refer back a little bit, but I have to be super aware that if I'm writing, most of the stuff I write is about young adults, about teenagers.
Yeah.
And they're living in a very different world than the one I grew up in. I grew up in, like, I graduated high school in 1998. Yeah. Like, you know, a teenager today would be like, ooh, in the 1900s? Like, you know, like...
Doesn't it trip you out? My kid's gonna turn 12, and then he hears something like, oh, look at hey, Dad, look at they're talking about this classic rock from the 90s.
Oh, no.
I'm like,
oh, no.
Classic rock from the 90s? Like, are you kidding me? Like, this was the best music invented. Don't say classic.
Don't
That's
say
like
classic. Yeah.
Let's say classic.
Right. So yeah, I just try to keep in mind, like, you know, Julian, before I think this would be like, oh, fine, here's my book on dinosaurs. And now it's like, download this app. I can't with you. Like, you know?
Yeah.
And also the idea that, like, if this were me kind of going back to when I was 16, I don't think I would be able to write Julian's character as sort of like out and not, you know, caring what people think about him. It's definitely a different world. Because I think that also within, you know, our community, there can be, and this will be discussed maybe a little bit coming up, but there is some sort of like, you know, this idea of like what a Mexican man is supposed to be, you know, this macho, this like, you know, hombre, this like thing. And Julian's like, that's not who I am. Like, and it doesn't make me any less of a person. And I think that may be even contributing. I'm not giving you like secret tea here, but I think that may be even contributing to maybe what his grandpa, like why he won't talk about his health issues. He's like, well, I don't do that. That will make me look weak.
You know, I have an uncle, and he touch a subject that hits a lot of people here. Not only do Latinos, Mexicans, Salvadoreños, everyone, we can't be depressed. Just get over it. You can't get sick. Just put some dirt on it and let's move forward.
Just go sniff some Vaporu.
Yeah, Vaporu, right? Or hey, you know what? I know this guy que sova. He'll rub your back and do all this and blow smoke in your face before they'll go to a doctor. You know, because it's ridiculous, but it still happens today. It is 2021, and I still have a tío that man has not gone to the doctor once in his life until he got COVID and went to the hospital, and he had to. You know what I mean? It's craziness. And even double backing on the machismo, that whole, I promise you, everything listening to this show over 25 years old is like, shoot, yep. You know, because everyone has had that beaten into them, you know, mentally, some unfortunately physically, that this is the way it's supposed to be. My father, for example, is a man that I asked him in tears in high school saying, I just want you to talk to me. And he literally looked at me in tears and walked out the room.
Yeah, couldn't do it.
Couldn't do it. You know?
Yeah.
But it's just
I think
crazy.
one of the strongest things we can say to people, you know, in our community that I think exhibit that, or even men, is to just be like, look, emotions don't scare me. you know what? I think that disarms people sometimes. And I think that relates in a bit to the struggle that is happening with this character, with Humberto in this book, is that his cousins are, I think, trying to help him understand, like, when you're afraid of who you are, when you're afraid of your power or the things that you can do, when you don't fully embrace that, that's when your life, you know, you're not living your life to the fullest. He's afraid to go full dinosaur because he thinks he can't control it. Yeah. Because he doesn't understand it. He doesn't understand who he is. And I think Julian's trying to get him to be like, look, you need to embrace who you are. He says something in that second issue about like you have the power to make a difference if you embrace who you are? Like, how are we supposed to believe in a better world for people like us when we don't see people like us,
That stood
representing?
out.
Yeah.
Julian's statement stood out, and Julian, like you said, the two things I love about the character, it's not blatantly thrown in your face, that he's out. It's very smartly done. Like when you read it between the lines, in a sense, but it's finesse when it comes to
Hmm.
that, right?
Yeah, that's
And
just
then
it's just who he
it's
is.
who he is, like And secondly, the fact that he was very vocal, like, man, like, wake up, like,
Hmm.
wake up. I get that vibe from him. Like, I'm here to wake Berto up. I'm here to wake everybody. Wake up, everybody. Like
Yeah,
he's that voice in your head that you want to always be talking, but you kind of, for some reason, hesitate. He's
right.
that voice.
Yeah, and I think that comes from he's a character that's embraced, who he is, and I think he's got a mom who you'll get more about it in issue 3. You'll find a little bit more
And
about
these
sort of that
teases,
history,
man. These
but
teases.
he's got a mom and a grandpa that support him and that love him, and I think that part of what that comes from is a lot of the trauma that this family went through when they lost. Beto lost
Family
his
members.
parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Papa Vic lost his daughter
Children. I
and
mean, child daughters
son-in-law.
and son-in-law.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and, Tia Gloria lost her sister. So like, I think that comes with like, oh, life is short. We need to like not waste time on all this stuff that doesn't matter.
Can
And
you
so,
agree that Latinx children mature a lot faster? They're almost forced to mature a lot
yeah,
faster when it comes to loss,
oh yeah,
bigotry.
absolutely.
You
Um,
know,
for a number of reasons,
sure.
and I think that in general, this is a maybe a stereotype or generalization, but in one case, imagine you have to translate for your parents at like parent teacher night or at court or at whatever. You're
Yeah.
obviously going to mature a little faster. If you have to navigate half of your day at home where you speak Spanish and the other half of your day out at school where you speak English, you're going to feel like, if you feel behind in language, because I need to catch up, I need to like be ahead of the game. So I think there's a lot of things about our community that make young people in it have to grow up pretty fast.
But
Yeah.
on the same note, why can't my son be a kid a little longer? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Hmm.
and I love the characters you're writing, because they still have that like glimmer, man, in their eyes. Like, they're still kids. They're so excited. They have
Hmm.
hope. Beto seems so like almost a mirror to a young adult that's just like defeated. Nothing
Hmm.
works. I'm just bummed. This is what it is. The rules say this. The law is passes this. I can't do what I want. But these are guys that are like just like so like, no, there's hope. And I still see
Hmm.
that in these kids, man.
Yeah, and I think even like Eva has a different approach. She's saying like, just by me knowing you, you inspired me that I thought maybe I could do something great. And
Yeah.
so, and that doesn't mean that she's like, I mean, I think she is sort of mature beyond her years. She's like taking college courses and whatnot, but she's still like, let's go have tacos. Let's hang
Is
out.
Eva? So let
It's
me ask you this question. Maybe you can't answer it, but I'll
mhm,
ask it because I'm here
okay.
with the creator. Is Eva an original character that you created, and is she now Marvel canon? I mean, is she
I will
something we
say,
can?
I will say this:
Okay,
Julian and Eva, Tia Gloria, and this villain are all original characters I created.
awesome,
Because they're in official Marvel comics, I assume that means they're canon.
nice. I'm gonna say that they are,
Yeah.
because that means you've spread the seeds, man. We're gonna get something out of this, and I see it. I hope Eva is gonna blow up from what I'm vibing off of. So, okay. Those shrugs, we'll leave it alone. Those shrugs are in quotes,
I
okay?
will neither confirm nor deny.
The shrugs are in quotes, everybody. But
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
in
Thank you.
sarcastic
Thank you
quote
for
marks.
sarcastic quote marks.
Yeah.
But
Um,
I love that. I love
but
that.
that's something that when I pitched the book, I said, look, if I'm going to write this, that he's got to have cousins. One of them's gay and one of them's a girl, and she's like super smart.
Dope.
Because those are like you said, I think that kids like Latino and Latinx kids, they have to like mature pretty fast, just like queer kids, because when we spend our day, like say at school, we're worried about, if you have to worry about like, is someone going to bully me, Is someone going to make fun of either me because I'm gay, or make fun of my accent, or make fun of my skin color? We're worried about those things when what we should be worried about is, when we're kids, is like, did I do a good job on my English exam, right? So that, like you said, robs us of a bit of our childhood. And when I think you have supportive community, supportive parents, family like Eva and Julian, then you get to see kids, like, if they're not trying to survive, then they get to thrive.
Amen, man.
You know?
That is such a statement, because I'm with you. I said we grew up. I mean, an example with I don't want to put words in your mouth, but my father was a very strong, very masculine driven. I mean, the man did bodybuilding, like it was all about muscles and being strong, and you're weak, etc. And
Mhm.
hey, you should go do this for a living, go pour concrete. And I go, I just want to write stories, Dad. Like it's a whole like,
Mhm.
almost like looked down upon. Flash forward 20 something years, the man looks at me and goes, "Are you happy? Are you okay?"
Mhm.
Age changes things. Things move forward. Do you think that how things are now, using the example of the book, let's say these characters are growing up in this, of course, superhero world, fantasy, but
Yeah.
we're taking a lot from the time. We're considering it to modern times. In these modern times, it's allowing for more and more kids like this. Let's just assume Beto is the beginning of something new.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that it helps kids to see themselves reflected back that way. And I hope that, I don't know. I don't know, like, really anything beyond this mini series about what could happen or what could be.
Yeah.
But I would hope that if the book, it does well, if it's supported, if it makes money, that why would Marvel say no to doing more? I don't see why
Yeah.
they would.
Primos, go out there,
Yeah.
buy his book. You need to go buy Reptil #1
But
digitally, physically.
yeah, I wanted to write this for, hopefully anyone can read it and find something great in it. Either, you're a kid and you're having a rough time, or you're someone who lost someone close to you, or, you're a queer kid who sees yourself in Julian. There's, hopefully there's something there for a lot of different people. But a big part of the book is like, who are you a hero for? Like,
Mm.
what community do you represent? And so this is a book for Mexicans, for Mexican Americans. And I hope that, some of those at the beginning of issue 2, if you haven't read it, slightly spoilery, but there's a conversation about dinosaurs, but also about Mexican pride. He asked his mom what her favorite dinosaur is, and she's like, "Oh, that's easy. It's Quetzalcoatlus." And he's like, "Say what? What is that?" And
Yep.
she's like, "Listen, this dinosaur is named after an Aztec god." And his dad's like, "That's important. Having something with a Mexican name that is a source of pride. That we get to share our culture with the world that way. And so you shouldn't be ashamed of where you come from or who you are. So hopefully the
And it does.
Mexican community, gets
My
something out of it."
son, I had to tell him, like, check this out, check out the book. We read the book, and he's like, "Is it really a Mexican dinosaur?" And I go, like, "No, it's named after a Mexican god." And then I explained it to him. We looked up the mythology, and then it kind of. My wife's from Mexico, from El Salvador. Regardless, I try to teach as much as I can, and then it kind of
Mhm.
fell on me as a parent. I go, "Oh shit, there's an interest. Let's go
Mhm.
look it up. Let's go now. Let's dig. Now let's talk
Yeah.
about it." And we bring up the conversations, and that your book did that. So I
Oh,
give you that.
good.
It mission accomplished, at least for
Good.
that.
That makes me happy. Good.
That's good. I'm glad, man. I want to come back a little bit to the book here, and I know we have the issues coming out. The next issue is, I believe, August
The next issue, actually, I believe, comes out in 1 week.
23rd. No, 20.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah.
21st, I believe. Yeah.
21st.
So that'll be issue
Yep.
3. They're skipping a month so that I guess
Mm.
everybody can catch up in August,
Yeah,
right? And then the
yeah.
final issue will be released in September. There will be a little thing that I can, release, that I can promote and talk about, semi-related to this, in August and the end
Okay,
of
okay.
July. So
Hey,
you
man,
won't be
we can
left with
definitely check in and
nothing. But
okay,
yeah,
okay,
check out my
perfecto.
Twitter, and I'll let you know on my
Definitely,
Twitter. But
definitely, man. What's your Twitter? Let's go ahead. What's your
my
Twitter?
Twitter is, get this, Terry Blas. In our school,
So original.
the head of my department, he was like, "Be easy to find." It's like, people can't hire you if you're not easy
Stop
to
being
find.
clever.
Right.
Stop
Yeah.
being
So
clever.
Terry Blast is my Instagram. It's my Twitter. It's yeah. Yep.
So let's go back. You moved
Mhm.
around a lot, military, your
Yep.
mother, your father. What was the plan in high school, man? Was it always artistic? Was that like, oh man, I want to draw, I want to write? I mean, was it always art, or was there a different plan? Did you want to be a vet?
No.
You know?
Yeah. I was always drawing, and I thought that mostly influenced by like my dad and by the things that I was allowed to be exposed to because I grew up very religious.
Mm,
Um, I thought that I was gonna like try to be a Disney animator, like draw cartoons
yeah.
for Disney or something. Um, that's not what happened. But in California, I was preparing to like go to art school because I knew that drawing was the thing that I thought I was best at. And it didn't really work out for me there. A friend of mine, she was working in comics in Portland, and she was like, "Why don't you just move to Oregon? There's no sales tax here. All you've got to do is sit inside and draw all day because it rains like 6 months out of the year." And there were a lot of comic book companies here, so I moved here, and it was crazy. The week that I moved to Portland, I found an apartment, I found a job, and I got into art school all in the same week.
It was meant to be.
Yeah, and then 3.5 years later, graduated art school, started drawing in comics. I joined a studio in downtown Portland called Helioscope, and it's, I believe, the largest collection of independent comic artists in the country, where we just share like studio space and draw and work there. And yeah, I started working there just because of the few people that I knew there. Got a couple little gigs doing some comic book covers. And after a while there, I decided that I wanted to start writing. And so I started submitting pitches to different companies, and things just kind of took off from that. Oh, I say took off. It was like 10 years of
It was a slow start, like run up,
right.
run up,
Yeah.
run up. We're
I don't
building up.
like people say like, how do you get discovered in comics? I was like, nobody gets discovered. This isn't like the 60s where you're sitting in like a malt shop and someone's going to come in and be like, I discovered you. Do
Malt
you want to
shop.
draw? You got to
Oh,
like, you've got to like put in the work. And in fact, one of the guys that started the studio told me, I was like, how do I, just start getting a lot more work? And how do I like create a career where I, don't have to worry about money and where jobs come to me? And he was like, you have to put 10 years into this of struggle. And I was like, oh, day one. And I just did it.
you're like, oh, you mean like, I gotta
Yeah.
wait? I just can't
Right.
happen, right?
Yeah, exactly. I can't just like skip those 10 years.
Right.
But those 10 years are like, they're basically learning on the job. It's something that was really important that I thought about that you mentioned earlier was, when you talked about ownership of like characters and things like that, and writing versus drawing. I remember learning that like if I write like say like an X-Men story or something, and then they turn that into a movie or a cartoon, I don't make any money because I don't own the X-Men. And
Yeah.
so, I just wrote something for them. And so that's why I felt like what I really wanted to do and where I really thought I could learn was making up my own stories and writing them for independent companies. That's what my first book is called, Deadweight. And it's a book I co-wrote with my friend Molly Muldoon. And it's a murder mystery set at a fat camp. And the
I
main
love it.
character is a plus-size Mexican girl. Her name's Jessica. And she wants to design clothes. And her parents tell her that she can go to the summer fashion program she wants to go to next year if she loses weight at fat camp this year. And
Oh
then while
man,
there, she witnesses a murder.
dude, I love it. Right? Let's make a TV show happen. I love it.
Right. And I was like, hey, but I own those characters. Those are characters I created.
Yeah.
Same with Hotel Dare. I created Mama Lupe, Olive, all these characters there that I just felt like, if something gets made there, then at least that's a point of pride for me that was something I created and put into the world. And it's not some other company that's making all the money off of something I wrote,
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, there is something to be said about taking somebody's character and making it your own, right? So, for example, like
Mhm.
let's say Reptil, right? You said kind of an unknown character. Like, it was like, who
Yeah.
is this kid? Okay, cool power. He belongs to Marvel.
Yeah.
Okay, but there's nothing there, no substance, right? And
Yeah. I
then,
think they wanted him to have a bit more of a solid sort of like character and personality. And I think that's not to say I'm not throwing shade at anyone who wrote him before. A lot of the stuff that was written with him before I think is really good. But just by default of him being in a teen book, team, not teen. There's so many other characters that you have to focus on as well. So you don't get sort of like, the meaty character moments and character development as much as you would in a series that just focuses mostly on him.
Yeah, because I mean, we look at it, he was with the Avengers Academy, that whole story arc. I trust me,
Yeah.
I'm geeking out. Like, where is this kid? But you're right. That's why one shots make a big deal for me. I enjoy one shots. I enjoy small series, solo series, because I'm like, I want to know more. If I didn't care, I don't know, whatever, dude. He could be the fucking wallpaper.
Yeah.
But there's enough here for me to want to know more. Like you said, a dude who wouldn't want dinosaurs and pits and fucking fauna, and like that whole split in the story, man, got me really excited. Where it's like, wait a minute, fauna and I was like, oh, there's something here.
Yeah. And that's so in my research and in my writing, I came across that character that you see in issue 2, the hag. And she was a character that Jack Kirby created, all the way back then.
Wow.
And they decided in the writing of, because she comes from Dinosaur World, which is not the Savage Land. Dinosaur World's this different Earth, I think they decided like, well, if she comes from Dinosaur World, then she should be the one who created his amulet. So that wasn't an idea I came up with. That was established. And here Julian's like, well, who knows the most about it?
There you go.
Okay, cool. Let's go see. I think he said, I don't remember.
The funniest person to have around. Like, dude, where can we get the best tortas right now? He's going to be the guy to know.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
I think he says something like, who created your amulet then? And Beto says like, oh, the hag of the pits. And he says, the hag of the what?
Yeah.
And then like when he sees the pits, he says something like, oh, you have a really lovely home. Like he doesn't know what to say.
A little lovely hole in the ground.
But I also think that when you can laugh for a character, like when you're much more susceptible to feel emotion for that character. And so towards the end of that issue, something happens, and I think hopefully people, will be invested enough to be like, no.
Yeah, definitely check out the book, guys. I'm invested. I'm in. And Chikume made it a thing. He takes his daughter to the comic book shop in the bookstore like every other week to pick up books. That. And he's like, I'm making it a thing. We're gonna get Reptil, and that's her, because Latino character, and she's young. She's like, that's awesome, but she loves going, the experience of going and seeing a book, and okay.
I would feel so wrong writing Reptil and then a little girl going to pick it up and read it and not seeing anything in there for her. And that's not to say she can't relate to Umberto. Like, I'm sure plenty of girls see that and they're like, oh man, that's badass, and I want to turn into dinosaurs too. But then to just have that and Eva in there, that just like, or maybe you see Tia Glow and you're like, okay, one day I want to have a nice house in LA and I want to be a doctor. That's what's going to get great.
Yeah, so, I want to be a grandpa playing video games, like
totally,
dope long hair. But here I am,
Yeah, he looks like a frail Danny Trejo, right?
I guess I would have given him more like, I get vibes from, who is it? Like, for whatever reason, and maybe it's just me, man, Ricardo Montalban, but with long hair.
Okay, yeah.
Like,
I guess it's easier to throw a ponytail on someone than to make them look like frail. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, for me.
I see it.
Yep. So, but I'm all about it, man. But yeah, so you jumped in, you started doing the work, wanted to be an animator, you jumped to comics, and I mean, we're here talking because of the fact that the book just hits the right nose for a presentation, man. And it caught my eye. Obviously, you can't get. I'm not gonna say there isn't, but you can't get it bigger than a Marvel or a DC. I mean, that's huge.
They're called the big two, right?
I mean, that literally is. Yeah. And honestly, where do we go from here? What is next for Terry? What's up down the line that you can share about or talk about, or your own personal things you're working on?
I'm always working on personal projects. Always. In October, I have a graphic novel for young adults coming out about Cesar Chavez. And so it's about his walk that he did with the whole group, and the strike that they did. And so it's the first time that I wrote like kind of a biography of a real person. But it was a great experience and I loved working on that book. And so that's out in October. And also in October, I have another book with Claudia Aguirre, who drew Hotel Dare. She did a story. She did Steve Orlando's story in the Marvel Voices Pride issue which
Oh,
introduced
okay.
the character Somnus. So she's got some a story, a Marvel story in there. But she's like, I call her mi hermana mexicana. We've never even met in real life, but we like talk every day. And she drew another book that I have coming out from Shirley Books, which is also Abrams. It's called Lifetime Passes, and it's about a theme park. It's a very strange setup story, but
Dude, right here. I want to know
everything.
it. I want to know it. What is it? I
Okay,
love the
all right,
title so
right.
far. Dish, man, dish.
It's about a young Mexican girl named Jackie, and she lives with her aunt, and she's obsessed with her local theme park, which is called Kingdom Adventure. It's a fairy tale theme park, and she has these other teenage friends. They're all terrible, and they're all like bad, awful kids. And she lives with her aunt, who runs. She's the head nurse at an elder care facility, and her aunt tells her, we're running out of money. I'm sorry, but I can't afford your pass for next season. I know you love going to this
Into
park.
the world, man.
Right.
Into
Well,
the
for
world.
her, and for her it is, and you come to find out why. And she had a connection to this park because of her parents who were deported, and her
Okay,
dad always
okay.
used to take her to this park. So that's where she feels closest to her parents, and she really needs to go. So at the park, when her and her friends go for like one last kind of hurrah, they overhear some people talking and find out that the park has a rule that if a member of your party dies while at this park, to avoid a lot of legal trouble, the company will give the rest of your party lifetime passes to the
I'm
park.
in, dude. Sign October.
Yes.
Okay. What is this called?
And it's called lifetime passes. And the
Love
kids
it.
come up with a plan to form a fake senior citizen outreach program to take the elderly
Oh
from the
my
elder care
god.
to the park in hopes
Oh
that
my
one of
god.
them just might
Die on a
die
roller
while there.
coaster.
And there's an old woman named See, I can't tell you just like a one sentence of
No,
this.
you can't, man. Because
So,
I'm
but
in though.
literally, this is all set up. This is just all the setup.
Oh, okay,
Um,
okay.
There's an old lady named Phyllis who lives at the elder care facility, and she's very fashionable and kind of old Hollywood, but she's this old lady, and you get the sense that she knows what these kids are doing, but she volunteers to go with them quite a bit anyway. And she has her own reasons for doing so. And what I wanted to do was create a story where, Jackie and this woman start to relate to each other, so she doesn't want anything bad to happen to her. But then that means that the kids are like, well, we'll say this was your idea if you stop doing it. Your aunt will lose her job.
Ooh.
So that's that book. And then
Dude,
in November,
I love it.
I believe in November, don't quote me on this, but I think that's when the collected trade of Reptil comes out.
Ooh, there you go.
But yeah, I'm working on a few other books. I have one book the only other project I have that's been announced that I can talk about is called Eat Your Heart Out. And it's another book with Oni Press. And I'm writing that with my friend Maddie Newton. And it's about I write a lot of books about young Latinas, young Mexicanas.
There you go. You have
it's about a young
style.
Mexican American girl from Idaho named Blanca. And yeah. And her mom, Reina, wants her to go into real estate. And she's like, I don't think so. She wants to do fashion. So when her mom leaves, she runs away to where her late father's home was in New York City, to the Big Apple. And she moves in with 7 gay guys.
Keep going. Keep going.
And then her mom sends a private investigator after her. So it's essentially a Mexican modern day queer retelling of Blancanieves. Because Blanca and Reina and Eat Your Heart Out and the 7 guys and the Big Apple.
Oh my god.
The private investigator is like the huntsman. And,
yeah.
And so
and tell me there's an angry gay one, there's a sleepy gay one, and there's a hungry gay
it's
one.
More like there's
so
like a
funny.
twink and a bear and a drag queen and it's more like that
mix. Okay.
But there's no release date for that yet, but it's moving along.
That is awesome.
I'm super excited for it. It's going to be really, really fun. I do.
I'm gonna one day. I have this pitch. I have a friend. She's an artist too. Elia Maria Madrid. You know her?
Oh yeah,
she does in the inbox. Yeah.
Yep.
So we chat, we talk here and there, and she does creative stuff. And I pitched her this idea long ago, and I'm like, dude, think about it. Like, either you or me or somebody we know, we have to make this happen. She loves like, drag race and drag and stuff like that. And it's fun, right? And I tell her, I had a story that me and my buddies came up with one night, and we called it One Last Drag. And they're like, well, what is this? What is it about? And I go, think about it. One Last Drag is a team of older, almost kind of like semi or about to be retired drag queens to the point where
it already.
Right, semi kind of like on their last leg, kind of, but still have a following, just kind of falling off.
Yeah.
And they've kind of hard up for money. The cabaret is kind of shutting down. And they're like, well, you know what? Let's just throw one last big show, one last big event. But someone comes across like online, or I forget how I got there, where there's a competition called the One Last Drag. But the competition is actually a drag race. And so they become the first all drag pit crew / drivers for a drag race and get this huge following.
I have a friend that would love this. Because whenever we watch Drag Race, he's like, why aren't there more cars in this? I want more cars.
There you go. And she's like, I love it. I love it. And they named the car the Runway.
Oh, I love it.
And that's the one and it's a whole story about, making the rest of the world accept them, because it's not usually what you see. It becomes a whole idea about growth, and you know what, they still got it regardless of their age, and they made a comeback. And that's we talked about making that into a thing. So man,
make it
right.
You have to now. You just put the idea out into the world.
It's into the world, man, and I have to now. So you can't copyright ideas, apparently.
There you go.
No, like, I love the idea that you're able to write these stories that just, why not? They're fun, regardless of who they're targeted at. They're just fun stories in general. It's dope. I love it. I'm excited to see where Reptil goes. And really, if it goes any further than these issues, I'm down. I'm all for it. I want to have a little action figure that I can kind of change into. Remember those ones? Remember the Power Rangers that you would push the belly button and it would flip into a dinosaur?
I also have the idea for, I want an action figure of him, but they released this line called Marvel Legends. And when you buy it, it comes with an extra body part. So you have to buy like all the characters, and then each one of them, by that time, then you have all the parts for another character, right? So why not have a figure of Humberto that like you can take an arm off and put a dinosaur arm on? Or you can take his legs off and put dinosaur legs, and you can make all different kinds of dinosaur parts and then put them on him.
Yeah,
I want
that'd be
it.
fun.
I need it. Yeah.
No, because it's the fun, like, little kid thing. Like, my son, like, he watches like Steven Universe. He loves Steven Universe. Like, dude, like, that's
I
like
wrote
his
4
favorite.
issues of Steven Universe.
I was gonna mention that. That's why I bring it up.
Okay.
Because you work on Steven Universe, and I love how that series and the comics and on the show, of course, they've driven that message, of acceptance and just being you, relationship, talking about toxic relationships. Just, my son's been able to understand like his aunts, my sister and her wife, and she calls him Ruby and Sapphire,
oh my gosh, that's so sweet.
It's my tia Ruby, my tia Sapphire, because my sister has really big curly hair, like a little fro almost. Sometimes she's lined it up now. She cut it and lined it all up, but she had the puffy little fro, and her wife had long hair. I even bought him a shirt.
Oh wow, I love this. I love it so much.
I love it, man. Steven has been a big thing in our home, and my sisters love it. And I know you touched on that and wrote on those books. And what was that like, man? I mean, tell me that experience.
Steven Universe came to me because the same company that publishes it published my book Hotel Dare, and an editor there messaged me saying, I read Hotel Dare and I liked what you did because it was a sort of like a fantasy epic kind of adventure, but with some heart in it. And would you want to do the same thing for Steven Universe? And I was like, yes, are you kidding me? I'd seen every episode. And he said, okay, we want to do 4 issues about Lars in space. And I said, I don't know. It was almost like, I'm not religious, but it was like a light shining down and like the Hallelujah chorus. Because I was like, I have complained about this before, not a complaint, but like, we don't really see much once he becomes the captain of this ship. We don't see much about him after that. He just shows up on Earth. And I was like, well, that's a whole cartoon series. Like this adventure of him in space on the, I am an insane Star Trek fan. So I was like, this makes a lot of sense to me. And so he said, write up a pitch, send it to us. You're not the only person we're talking to. I think sometimes they got to say that too, so you don't get your hopes up,
Yeah.
And because of my military Mormon Mexican upbringing, I wrote a pitch like right away. I was flying to California the next day, and I was like, I just have to write him something that's good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect, but if it's good enough, then he won't have to go seek out someone else. He'll go, oh, right, this works, and I'll just go with this guy.
Fix it from there.
Yeah. So as I packed my suitcase, I watched the 3 episodes where like Lars turns pink,
Yeah. Which was hard to watch. Can we just talk a little bit for a second about Steven and those episodes? Yeah. That was a tough few episodes, like just emotionally, because we sit there watching a character that we've kind of let's be real, was a background character. At least in the beginning of the series, you kind of grown to love them, and then you slowly see this side of Lars, like that vulnerability we all feel as a teen, that just everything, and then he goes through this. He's shoved into a situation that he didn't know anything about, and then we get pink Lars. Not to kill it for anybody, no pun intended, but let's talk about
that. There's been enough time. It's
been years enough, but he's
so the thing that I thought about while watching these episodes and coming up with ideas was Lars loves to bake, and his shyness about him is sort of what instigated him getting kidnapped, because he threw his like roll in the garbage and then like walked away, and that's when he got taken. If he had walked into the party like, I made this, guys, that might not have happened. But now that he's pink, kind of like Lion and whatnot, he doesn't have to eat. He's commented on, I'm not hungry, and that's weird. Okay, I don't need to eat. I can't taste anything, whatever. And I thought, well, what do you do with someone who loves to bake but doesn't have to eat? And then I was like, well, does that turn into you baking something for other people? Does that make them happy? Does that turn into like, in a way, like a service of someone else? And I was like, well, it's kind of like being a captain, is that you're like doing this for other people. You're leading them in a way. And does that relate? And I thought maybe he feels inadequate as a captain because just the way he felt inadequate as a baker. And what I thought was they need to be pursued by Emerald, because I love Emerald, who's played by Jinx Monsoon from Drag Race. And I was like, Emerald needs to find them, and they need to be like, we got to escape. But what if escaping into like a nebula brings out all of their deepest fears, and they have to confront them, And so part of one of his deepest fears is seeing Sadie again, because he still feels guilty about what happened to her. If I hadn't, I ran away when I could have helped you, kind of thing. And I have him have a dream that he has like a bakery and everything's great in Beach City. And I think eventually that happens on the show.
Because you got space trees.
I was prophetic.
you called it into existence.
I did.
Man. You did
it. And it was just so much fun to write. It was a ton of fun to do. How
much pressure though? Be real. Like how much pressure? Like, oh shit, this is something you love to watch, something you enjoyed. Like, did you feel like, oh man, I gotta nail this?
I don't know why, but I don't feel a ton of pressure. I sort of adopt the idea of like, well, someone has to do it. Someone's gonna do it, so it may as well be me.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, I think that's my block sometimes when I write. I hit that wall where I'm like, damn, but is it good enough?
I mean, so here's a couple things. I think one, less pressure because it's not like I'm contributing officially to the canon of the show. So, that's a little different. I'm doing comics and they can kind of be seen as like a separate adventure. And if you don't want to think of it as canon, you don't have to. The other thing that I feel like I learned in those 10 years that I put in was that done is better than perfect. So if we're always striving for, is this good enough? I don't know if it's good enough. Like nothing will ever be perfect, because nothing is perfect, and we're never perfect. So to have something that you can say, I did this and it's done and move on, is I think much better than the worry, at least for me. Because I can get into that worry. I can like, I can live in the. Did you see Luca?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Dug it, loved
I
it.
can live in that like Bruno headspace, right? And so I call her Deborah though. Like my Bruno is I'm like Deborah, that's enough. Um
My mom
and
calls her. I think she calls her Cayates. ¿Cómo le dijo? Oh, le dijo Laura. She calls her
Laura, yeah,
Laura.
whatever you
Yeah,
need.
her
Yeah.
Laura.
Yep, mine's my Deborah, and I just try not to live in that space. I think I do my best to not read like the bad stuff because then that's giving into Bruno or Laura or Deborah, and I think that would fuel my like I don't know if this is good enough. Um, yeah, I try not to think about that. I just write it, and I feel like I feel like at least I'm working with other people. Like if it's not good enough, the editor might tell me. They might say this needs to be stronger in this area and this needs to be. So I just put a lot of trust in them that, you know, they're professional and they're helping me along.
Awesome, awesome. So we're getting here to the end of the show. I've kidnapped you for longer than I expected,
You're
but
fine. No worries.
let me ask you this, man. Like, let's talk TV. I know you watch TV. I know
Oh,
you
let's
love
do it.
TV. Let's talk
Hmm.
TV. What right now would say are the top three things you've been watching? They don't have to be new. Just what are the
Okay.
top three things you're watching right now?
I know my number one, so I'll save that for the end.
Okay.
I watch a lot of reality competition TV, but so I won't talk about that because we're talking about story.
Sure, it's a story.
I love The Handmaid's Tale.
Yes, my wife pulled me in, dude.
But in a country where the fastest growing demographic is Latina, where all the Latinas, there should be more in this show. Not that I want to see them be handmaids or whatever, but so Handmaid's Tale. Gosh, I'm trying to think of another one because there's one show I'm obsessed with, and I'll get there. But let's see. I just watched all. These are like answers that anybody would say, but I just watched all of The Crown with my mom because my
my mom loves the fucking Crown, man.
See,
She
and
loves the Crown.
I was like, Mom, you're like the only Mexican lady I know that's obsessed with Princess Diana and the British royal family. We started season 1, right? And she's like, pero cuando sale Diana? I'm like, Mom, you gotta watch 4 seasons.
My mom was like an early adopter, man. The minute it came out, she's like, "Ooh, I can't wait till they get to Diana."
I'll be honest, I am really liking Loki much more than I even expected to. I think it's structured really well. It's a ton of fun. I look forward to it every week. And I loved WandaVision, of course. My number one show, honestly think it's like the best show I've seen in like 10 years, is Veneno on HBO Max.
Okay. I've seen the previews. I see the art. I have not bit yet. Tell me.
I have
Pitch
cried during every episode. So if you don't know, if you don't, and it's like 8 episodes. If you don't know, it's based on the life story of Cristina Ortiz, La Veneno, as they called her, and she was a trans performer and sex worker, and she was many, many things in the 90s in Spain. And they put her on TV, and she became super famous. And this young trans woman who was studying to be a journalist wrote a book about her, like met her in her old age, but she's not that old. And started writing a book about her. And it's a series that follows the story of this young woman and Veneno through like her whole life. It's emotional, it's sad, its story structure is so strong that I recommend it to everybody. But
I'm gonna check it out. It's been there when we're swiping through because we saw the.
So here's the thing. When you start playing it, it might start playing funky because they think that everybody in the United States watches HBO Max in English and et cetera, et cetera. But make sure that the audio is in Spanish because sometimes it defaults to English.
Oh, okay.
And that's an oh no for me.
No. I think some things have to be in the Spanish language. Like, and even I'll watch some, and I watched 7 Deadly Sins in Spanish. Because it was the voice acting was just insane. I loved it in Spanish.
Nice. There's something that's crazy about Veneno. Her best friend was this woman called Paca la Piranha. And you see that character when she's young, but when you see in like present day that character being played, the real Paca plays Paca in this show.
Wow.
It's
Okay.
bizarre because you must think about like, oh, she's like playing herself in these scenes that really happened with an actress that's playing her former best friend because she's passed away now. But it's really intense and the music's great and I can't say enough good about it. Grab a box of tissues.
Oh man, I'm in. If it's
It's
a good
good.
story, especially
It's a
when it's a story
great
like that,
story.
I'm in.
It's
I'm in. I'll
and you
check it
learn so
out.
much about like Spanish television at the time, and it's really interesting. It's definitely very good.
Me, I've been watching Mr. In Between.
What's
It's an
that?
Australian show
Okay,
about a man that's a he's a hitman.
I'm writing it down.
Yeah, he's a hitman that works for like a strip club, right?
Okay.
But it's called Mr. In Between because he's kind of caught between having to commit these crimes and these murders and raising a daughter.
Mm,
They're in Australia, and he has a brother that has like a cerebral palsies at the same
okay.
time, and he's kind of caught between these two worlds, right? So he's Mister, but he's also the guy that goes in between. He's you're the in between,
Yeah.
that's kind of playing on words. But it's in Australia. The character himself really goes through a whole series of his father was a veteran, although was a army vet, very abusive to him and his brothers. There's even a portion of where he hasn't talked to his father like in 10, 15 years because of the abuse and
Mm,
the animosity there. He went into the military thinking that that's what he should do. And he came out similar to what his father's attitudes were. And he had a daughter, which changed the way he saw things, which made him change. And he went into a lifestyle of crime and violence and etc. But then he's
hmm.
trying to still be a dad, find a partner. And it's a really good story. A lot of twists and turns you don't see coming, man. A lot of twists and turns you don't see coming.
Yeah,
It's not a typical story.
that's what I love about Veneno is that like this young woman hearing how abusive Veneno's mother was to her because she was different, affects her own relationship with her mother and like valuing how much her mom does care for her and looks out for her. And so, yeah, there's some good storytelling there. Australia, there's some good Australian shows. There's a really
It's
funny
surprising.
sitcom called Fisk about a lawyer in Australia. That one's really good. Yeah, there's some good stuff.
Mr. In Between. Uh, my number one's Loki right now. I've just been watching it like crazy.
That's
My
so
son,
fun.
it's so fun. And I've been also watching an anime. And I recommend it a lot because it's funny, especially if you enjoy anime and if you can kind of get into the meta of anime.
Hmm.
It's called, let me see if I can pronounce it right because I'm going to look it up for you. It's so like, how anime is. Like, it's
Yeah.
always some more weird, wacky, crazy thing that you kind of have to mispronounce or read 3 times to understand it.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pitch you on it first before I find the name. There it is. Okay, so it's called. Let me use it here. It's called Full Dive. This ultimate next gen dive RPG is even shittier than real life. That's literally the title of the anime.
Oh my gosh.
So remember it. This ultimate next gen full dive RPG is even shittier than real life. The pitch is that you know of Sword Art.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's pretty much taking the idea of Sword Art, but no one dies in real life. You're not trapped in a game, but it's full dive. You experience the world,
Mm.
right? Everything from hunger, everything from pain,
Mm.
and you can die in the game. But here's the catch: if you die in the game, it bricks your console, destroys the game, and that's it. Because you suck at this game, it destroys it and ruins it for you. So it's not like a life or death thing. But the fact that when he's in the game, in his first mission, and it's a game, it's a video game, right? He accidentally kills somebody. Oh, I'll just restart. You can't. And in the game, he's a murderer being chased, and they says, "Oh, you're in an event. You can't exit. You can't quit because you're in an event right
Huh.
now." So it forces him to play through these scenarios that are almost like real life, where he's like, "Okay, give me a sword," and he tries to swing the sword. He can't. He drops it. It's so heavy.
Mm.
Like it's all real, and he's like, "Who the hell would play this shitty game?" And it becomes a whole thing. So I've been doing that, and lastly, of course, Loki, right?
Yeah.
Loki, like you said, well structured. I dig it. I love the character's growth. I love where they're going with it. My only hangups, if I can, because
Oh yeah.
it's not perfect, like you said. The hangups that I do have is that I needed more of the alternate Lokis. I needed more of that. I needed more time with those Lokis. I wanted to know a little more. I love them telling me, well, hey, this is my story. This is my story. This is my story. I would have liked a little more than that.
Yeah,
I feel
maybe
like,
just like one more episode with them, right?
yeah, one
Just
more. Give me
one.
one
That'd be
more.
fine.
Show
Well,
me
I have a
one
feeling
more.
I have a feeling we haven't seen the last of Kid Loki.
That right there is where I'm aiming at because
I mean, if they've already cast Kate Bishop and America Chavez and Miss Marvel and
mhm,
Wiccan, so they just got to get to that already.
we're gonna get to that already. I'm excited, but Loki has been thing. My son, my wife, and me, we enjoy it. We love it. I love it. Here's my thing. Anything with time travel, I'm a fucking sucker for it. I'm in.
I tweeted a thing that was like, it was a GIF of this contestant on Drag Race where is a famous quote where she says, "Well, fuck my drag, right?" Like, "Oh, well, excuse me, I guess I'm shit then, huh?" And it was, I said, Miss Minutes, the minute alligator Loki shows up.
Yes. That's it, dude. I want the pop figure that I have to go find because
Yeah.
it's exclusive to Hot Topic, and I gotta chase the. Oh
So I know they made an alligator Loki. Did they make a Miss Minutes?
no, no, no! Hold on. Let me slow down.
Oh, okay.
There's a Miss Minutes, smallish one that comes with one of the pop figures.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Which
so
one?
it's the TVA agent. I forget her name. The judge, the
Oh, Rent
villain.
Slayer.
Yeah,
Rent
yeah.
Slayer. Okay.
So you get her and a small Miss Minutes, and
Wow.
also you
Okay.
get a small alligator
Alligator Loki with Kid Loki,
Kid
right?
Loki. Yeah, yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
I
So
just
you
want
have
the
to hunt
big
those down.
alligator Loki.
Which you gotta go to Hot Topic, and Hot Topic's not letting you pre-order. Yeah,
I don't want to stand in line at a Hot Topic.
I mean, when's the last time you went into a Hot Topic? Be real.
I honestly don't remember.
Yeah,
Not
this
that
is
I'm
gonna
above
come
it.
in there.
Because
No,
when
I
I was
mean,
a kid, Hot Topic was like where you go to get your manic panic hair dye and like you're a goth kid or whatever.
your
Now it's like where you go.
T-shirt.
Now
There
it's
you
where
go.
you go for like your Doctor Who stuff.
Hot Topic has interesting knickknacks. I'm all for it. It's kitschy, and then now I have to go for Alligator Loki. That's it.
Yeah.
And I gotta go to Buck's Lunch to get classic Loki because they're the ones that are gonna have it. Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I digress. We'll move
Yeah.
on. Geek
Yep.
stuff. But Terry, I want to kind of wrap it up here with you. I've had a blast, man. I hope did
Me
you enjoy
too. Thank
yourself?
you. Absolutely. Yeah. Anytime.
Well, I want to have you back on, of course.
Let's do
Hopefully
it.
when the series wraps up, that way
Yeah.
we can kind of really touch on the story and kind of start from soup to nuts, if you would. Kind of just have fun about the book and see where we are then. Definitely want to check out your new book that comes out in October, November. You said, right?
Mm-hmm. October.
So
Lifetime Passes and Cesar Chavez in October.
awesome, Terry. Is there you want to just throw out again any your socials, your website, anything like that before we end our night?
Just check me out on Twitter, Instagram at Terry Blas, and my website is terryblas.com.
Awesome. Primos, check it out. Of course, we're here week to week. This is a free show. All it costs you is, of course, a share, a like, subscribe. And we will be with you here next week. Take care, primos. Adios.